Hello from Arrowhead Stadium. Welcome to Sports Beat Live. This is our Chiefs post-game show with the folks in the media who know them best. You see Jesse Newell, Vahe Gregorian, Herbie Teope, and Sam McDowell here. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. What a game that we saw tonight with the Chiefs outlasting the Las Vegas Raiders 30-29 in a game that we did not know who was going to win until about 40 seconds remained in a fourth down pass from Derek Carr to, I don't know who the intended receiver was. It was either Devontae Adams or Hunter Renfrow. Felt incomplete as they fell over each other on a fourth down pass. But it ended a crazy game in which the Chiefs fell behind 17-0, then outscored the Raiders, what do I have here, 30-6, before finally prevailing 30-29. So send us your questions and comments. Talk about this game with us. And look, there's so many places we can go. Why don't there's Travis Kelce catching 4 touchdown passes for the first time in his career. There's the Devontae Adams having an incredible game. Same with Josh Jacobs for the Raiders. The Chris Jones roughing the passer penalty right before the end of the first half, which had this stadium booing as loudly as I've ever heard it, and Andy Reid as angry as I've ever seen him. But maybe we'll start with a little bit of a big picture. Sam McDowell, what's the meaning of a game like this where the Chiefs fell helplessly behind? It seemed. I know we've looked at some people along press row, and I counted them out. I'll admit it. When they were down 17-0, I thought it was over for the Chiefs. But what did you think?
Well, it's the first time we've seen this particular iteration of this team come back from a deficit like that. I mean, this is a different group than the 2019 team. So it's significant in that sense. And, from being in the locker room and the news conferences after the game, you certainly learned the moments within the game that you felt like finally woke this team up, whether it was the Chris Jones penalty. I thought that Jerick McKinnon run was really big because the Chiefs, the reason they got that in that hole was a lack of physicality in the game. The Jerick McKinnon run, I thought, changed that. But also apparently there were some really direct words from Patrick Mahomes to his offensive lineman at one point in the second quarter. And I heard some offensive linemen talk about it, then you heard Patrick Mahomes talk about it. But I think my bigger takeaway is that it would be nice at some point if those, as great as that is, that the Chiefs found a way to get motivated. And I think Patrick Mahomes found a way to get motivated because Max Crosby insisted that he would. But it'd be nice if it wasn't necessary to have those moments in a game. It's Monday Night Football out here. They only get 17 of these games a year. Only one of them is a Monday night home game. And I think the Chiefs should have played more like that from the beginning, recognizing that they can't play a perfect game for all 4 quarters. But it was really evident that they were not ready to play in that first quarter. The Raiders just manhandled them physically, and both sides of the ball. And like I said, they had moments that woke them up, but I don't think that a game like this should require moments to wake you up.
Yeah, Max Crosby in particular was pretty physical. The entire Raiders defense was, for sure. Vahe, what's your exploration of this game?
Yeah, it's a little of the same thing, Blair. I think that the interesting thing you can take away from this game is if you're looking at the arc of a season, you can say to yourself, okay, they got better through this, right? They found a gear that they didn't have. But we are left a little bit with the mystery of the sort of inexplicable doldrums when you're playing here on a Monday night football game against an AFC West team. They kind of just had a little wake up call 2 weeks ago in Indianapolis, and I think you would like to understand that they don't feel like they can just show up and win a game. Now, I'm saying this as a point of motivation, but in some ways the Raiders just appeared better than them in certain phases of the games at different times tonight. And sometimes that's not just about motivation, that's just matchups. So, it was a lot of the Rorschach test in this, right? You can sort of see what you want to in it. And I'd say it's literally a win, and I actually think it's a bigger net win for the Chiefs. But they're playing with fire too.
Herbie, I don't think I've ever seen Andy Reid as mad as he was on the sideline. I don't have the time of the Chris Jones roughing the passer flag, but whatever time remained, Andy Reid spent it just trying to get Carl Cheffers' attention and hunt him down. It was kind of funny, a little amusing to watch. But have you ever seen him that angry?
I haven't, and I actually asked him after the game. I said, Andy, I don't think I've ever seen you this angry before, and he immediately shut me down. I was like, your guys are trying to get me fined right now, and so he just reflected on it. But you're right, he was pretty animated, and you saw that at the end of the half. He took off his microphone gear and stuck around, and then made a beeline right for Cheffers and called him over, and was very demonstrative with his hands, pointing left and right before he turned around and left. Every reason to be upset about it, though. I think if anything, the NFL needs to look at how they penalize roughing the passer. There was a fumble. He was going for the ball. It's not Chris Jones' fault that Derek Carr happens to be in his way as Jones is trying to get to the football. So a lot of things in play here. They got to take a look at that.
No doubt about it. Of course, we've got the explanation from Carl Cheffers, the referee. After the game, Adam Teicher, our friend who works for ESPN now, went down and was the pool reporter that got the quotes from Carl Cheffers. If you haven't seen them, they're on kansascity.com. I wrote a quick story about Chris Jones' reaction and Carl Cheffers. But before we get kind of a little more detail into that, Jesse, so many different places to go here, but I want to know if you've given much thought to both teams' 2-point conversion decisions on their last touchdowns in the fourth quarter. The Chiefs, when they went up 30-23, going for 2, and what was the time left? About 7 minutes, maybe 7.5 minutes. And then the Raiders, when the Chiefs failed to make it, the Raiders crawling within 1 with 4 minutes to play and going for 2 and not making it. I just thought I didn't think either coach made the right decision in both instances.
Well, real quick, Blair, a couple things. One, I love the background you have. I'm imagining you being the small spoon with Patrick being the big spoon, and his arms are kind of coming around your waist right now. So it's a great mental image. I want to start with that. Number two, if you're a Chiefs fan out there, my goodness, I mean, how big of a win is this? How important is this? And I'm looking at the yards per play, 6.8 for the Raiders, 5.3 for the Chiefs, and you win this game. You're 4-1. I mean, I know we talked about the game that they gave away against the Colts, but anytime you win a game when you get 1.5 yards per play less than the other team, you stole one. And the Chiefs stole one today. We can look at that holding penalty that happened on the field goal attempt that the Chiefs really made the Raiders pay on too. That one, a big call in that game as well. As far as the 2-point conversions, it was fascinating. I did not think the Raiders would go for 2 that late, because if you get it, then you're sort of forcing the Chiefs to be aggressive with 4 minutes left. So I think you sort of want to let a sleeping dog lie. And honestly, I think the Raiders kind of did a horrible job of that. They got up 17-0, and then all of a sudden, I wrote his name down, 25, Trevon Morris, or Morig, for the Raiders. He started talking some trash to Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce started catching passes and talking trash back to him. Obviously, we saw Max Crosby going back and forth with Patrick Mahomes. I think the Raiders would have been a lot better spot if they would have continued kicking the Chiefs' butt and stopped opening their mouths. Instead, they sort of woke up a sleeping dog. That call happened. It had a little bit of Allen Fieldhouse feel, where there's a bad call at Allen Fieldhouse, and in the second half, every call goes KU's way, and that sort of seemed like it was with the Chiefs. But as far as the 2-point conversion, it's kind of amazing to me. A guy can make a 59-yard field goal for you in the first half, and then you just completely seem like you have no confidence in him in the second half. And that's twice this season that the Chiefs have done that with their replacement kicker that is not Harrison Butker. So I was surprised they didn't kick the extra point there. I do understand the reasoning, which is, hey, if your offense is amazing, put the offense on the field, go up 2 scores. If they make that, then obviously we're not talking about it right now. But it is an interesting trend for the Chiefs, is that they either feel good about their kicker or they feel really bad about their kicker. And I think this makes 2 straight weeks where if there's a little bit of shakiness, then Andy Reid has really gone away from his special teams.
I think, Blair, I enjoyed the 2-point conversion because the situation comes down to an easy question which is, do you have more confidence that your offense is going to get the 2-point conversion or that your defense is going to stop a 2-point conversion? Oddly enough, they were wrong twice on that because the exact opposite happens on both the result. But I still think it's a process over results thing, and I liked the process. But he didn't stick with it late in the game. He chose his defense to get a late stop rather than his offense to convert a 4th down. And I thought that was completely backwards. I think if you're going to stick with it once, you got to stick with it twice. And I think in here you do stick with it twice. You know, the Chiefs could have lost this game because Carson's got a really big leg. I thought if the Raiders got to about the 40-yard line, we'd be looking at a field goal attempt to try and win the game. And by the way, there were one Devontae Adams toe
tap.
toe tap away from getting into that field goal range. And then all of a sudden, the whole story of the game is, why didn't Andy Reid leave his offense out there on the field on that 4th down?
Exactly. And why was Clyde Edwards-Helaire the running back that got the attempt that where he ended up, getting tackled on 3rd down going sideways instead of Jerick McKinnon, who had a better game, or Isaiah Pacheco, who's a harder, seems to be a harder run. Look, they're kind of equal in terms of their abilities. Some do different things better. And I thought that McKinnon, anyway, he ran the toughest tonight. So, listen, so we're going to go back to something Jesse said. With the stats, the Raiders seem like a team that would have prevailed tonight. I don't know if you saw, I saw a tweet earlier tonight that the Raiders had a 150-yard rusher, of course, Josh Jacobs, 100-yard receiver in Devontae Adams, no turnovers, no more than 2 punts, and lost the game. They're the first team in NFL history to have all that and not win a game. So the Chiefs literally found a way to do this. So let's take these one at a time. Why don't we start with the guy I made the KC star of the game, and that's tight end Travis Kelce. Lousy night in just about every statistical category, right? Yards per catch. He had 7 receptions, 25 yards. 25 yards, that's got to be one of the lowest figures of his career. I don't know what he did except score every touchdown for the Chiefs. And it was, Mahomes' favorite target in the red zone. It's just another example of how valuable he is, and what a great competitor. He's not always perfect, but he's always pretty darn good. And tonight I thought he was a difference maker.
Yeah, and the way they defended him was really unique. And it's actually, I'm surprised more teams don't defend Travis Kelce this way. I think I pointed out to Jesse on one of his touchdowns that Max Crosby just blows him up at the line of scrimmage. And so at some point, the Raiders had decided that they were going to pull Crosby as far out as it took, because we know that Travis Kelce does not typically line up where the tight end position traditionally is. He's on the hash. He's on even sometimes outside the numbers. And when he was on the hash, they would take Max Crosby that far off of the edge, as a defensive end, and just chip him before he got to his route. But in effect, that took away the Raiders' best weapon tonight, which was rushing Patrick Mahomes with the defensive ends against Andrew Wiley and Orlando Brown. But that's why he only had 25 yards receiving. And I'd encourage people to go back and watch his 3rd touchdown, because he gets knocked almost to the ground. And by the time he gains his balance, he immediately turns around to Patrick like, hey, I'm open. And he's still behind the line of scrimmage at that point. And of course, I think he ran 52 yards on that play to score a 9-yard touchdown
with a couple of stiff arms.
You know what's amazing about Kelce too is, again, how opening it up for others. It is that game of cat and mouse, because one of the big game's biggest plays, I was looking it up on the win probability chart, the 5th biggest play of the game was a 28-yard pass to McCole Hardman. It was a big 3rd down and long. The Chiefs actually didn't even send Kelce out on a route because they figured he was going to be double teamed. He actually helped with pass protection to start off with and chipped and kind of stayed toward the line of scrimmage. So it was weird. Early in the game, Max Crosby and Chandler Jones were so good, the Chiefs were leaving guys in to chip them. And then late in the game, Travis Kelce was so good that the Raiders were pulling off their pass rushers to try to double team him and or just chip him at the line to make sure he couldn't do things. But the essence of that is what the Chiefs hoped would happen, is that when he got attention, when Travis Kelce got attention, who opened up? Marquez Valdes-Scantling. CEH on routes out of the backfield, that sort of thing. And then Juju Smith-Schuster and McCole Hardman. Got to give McCole Hardman a kudos, too, for battling with his heel injury. I wrote about it earlier this week. He's fighting through, but he had an amazing block on Travis Kelce's third touchdown, stuck with a block, knocked the guy over, able to get Kelce in the end zone there. And then, like I said, he took advantage of when Kelce had extra attention, had 2 big catches down the sideline, 2 of the biggest catches of the game for the Chiefs. Again, that partly happens because of how the Raiders are defending Kelce and because he's taking 2 guys away. When you take 2 guys away, somebody else has got to beat single coverage. That didn't happen for the Chiefs earlier this season. Today, MVS and McCole Hardman and then CEH. All those guys won their matchups, and that's how they work together. That's how this whole thing can kind of operate, is that when one guy gets more attention, then the Chiefs can take advantage of the other matchups.
Mark says he didn't think this was necessarily the loudest he's heard Arrowhead, but it was the maddest, the angriest. I can agree with that. Herbie, let's revisit the play. Why don't you take us through what happened and then what we'll talk about what Sheffer said after the game, and then I want to talk about how that play may have inspired the Chiefs afterwards. But Herbie, take us through just what happened.
Well, it's a pass play. Obviously, Chris Jones breaks around. I'm trying to see how it is here. The right side of the offensive line catches Carr from behind. The ball is knocked loose, and as the two of them are coming down. Yeah, Jones knocks it loose, but as they're coming down, and in the spirit of the rule, I get it. A defensive player cannot use his full body weight driving the quarterback into the ground. That is what the rule is planned for there. But the ball is loose, okay, because Jones caused the fumble, and now Jones recovers it, but the flag comes. That extends the play, the possession, and of course, and then the Raiders score. I think it was 2 plays later. But that play there just infuriated Andy Reid, and infuriated the sideline, and it goes right into what you said. It did kind of it became a catalyst for the second half.
Did you think so, Vahe? I know we talked about it some in the second half, but certainly the Chiefs got going with the drive at the end of the first half that resulted the quick possession that ended in the record 59-yard field goal, team record from Matthew Wright, and then they scored on their first couple of possessions in the second half.
I do think so. And the ingredient in this that's a little hard to know is how much they actually were specifically affected by irate Andy, because they're not really used to seeing that. I mean, Andy is very much a guy who wants to project control and calmness in any situation. Last time I really remember him being animated at all was him yelling at a Rams player who came over to try to listen in on a huddle in that great game in Los Angeles a couple of years ago. And so he seldom shows anything like that. And it wasn't like it was a little burst, right? I mean, I think you put it, Blair, that it was, all the way to the rest of the half, and that was with some timeouts and stuff, but it even went on into halftime. And I do think that does a little something. It's a little hard to know how to measure that. And I do think it's easy for us to envision some fire and brimstone in the locker room at halftime, and maybe there was a little edge with that, but I also do think that what players were trying to say about halftime was that next play, we got to just keep playing. So some of that's a little intangible, but I if you just look at the results after that, and I don't mean just because the next 7 penalties went against the the Raiders, but there did seem to be at least some palpable difference in the game, the tone of the game after that.
Maybe something else that contributed to inspired play by the Chiefs was a little conversation that Patrick Mahomes had with his offensive line sometime in the first half, because Mahomes was getting, he was getting killed. And go ahead, Vine.
Well, just chime in with this, like the words from Patrick, and he said it the same way, I think almost verbatim twice in the post-game news conference. We're going to win or lose this because of y'all. That's pretty salty. And I think delivered with an edge probably too, right? I mean, I think he was appropriately complimentary to some of the things they did after that, but that's a telling thing to share, I think.
I think he had every right to. You know, when you come off a game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with that stout defense and that good pass rush, and the front five dominates the Buccaneers, and then you turn around against the Raiders, Max Crosby 2 sacks, Chandler Jones with a quarterback hit on the game. They hit Mahomes 6 times and they recorded 3 sacks. So we had every right to be salty, especially knowing the performance they did the week before. So that was a kind of a letdown. And if this is going to be their tune-up game, because we all know who's coming to town next week, the big bad Buffalo Bills, this was a disappointing tune-up.
I wonder if he was looking at Andrew Wiley when he said what he did, because Wiley was getting his butt beat by Max Crosby early on. So, hey, Brian makes a point. Lucky that Darren Waller was out, or else he doesn't see the Chiefs winning this game. I don't know what the Raiders' game plan coming in, but they used that additional offensive tackle a lot tonight. And Jesse, what did you notice the effectiveness of that? And I think, if I'm a future Chiefs opponent, I'm looking at at what the Raiders did. I haven't seen that against the Chiefs.
Yeah, allowed them to run it down the Chiefs' throat a little bit, and you kind of are able to dictate personnel when you put the big dudes out there and have to get the Chiefs into their heavier package. And obviously, it was working. There was one point, I know the graphics on the TV show, the Next Gen Stats showed that when the Raiders had 6 offensive linemen out there, they were averaging 9 yards a play, and that was even before Josh Jacobs burst another one down the sideline for about 40 yards too. So actually, I probably went up from that. So. We kind of knew. I mean, you sort of knew last week was the aberration where the Bucs got down immediately 7-0. They got the 6 carries for 3 yards, but it's Tom Brady. They're going to try to come back. They're going to pass them all around the yard. So the rush defense was going to be tested a little bit more. I think it was even it was Steve Spagnuolo earlier this week, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, who said, "Hey, I think the Raiders are going to try to run a lot, and you'll see a little bit more about the Chiefs in this particular game." So that was fascinating to kind of watch that. But yeah, I mean. You can say that with Waller, but honestly, I mean, think about the Chiefs. Who are they missing? They're missing Trent McDuffie. We saw that obviously the Raiders had 2 huge plays down the field where they were picking on some of the Chiefs' younger secondary players. The Chiefs were without Willie Gay, one of their top players on defense. The Chiefs were without Trey Smith unexpectedly in this game, sitting out with his pec injury. So there was a lot on the Chiefs side that was missing too. So I think you weigh both of these things. The Raiders got Renfro back. They obviously have a healthy Devontae Adams, all those sorts of things. So the bottom line is, again, if you are a Chiefs fan looking at this, you won the game. And I was talking to Hurry about this before the game, but you lose this one. Let's say the Chiefs went to 3-2. You'd have the Bills next week and then at San Francisco after that in your bye week. You could be 3-4 at the bye week. All of a sudden, you're looking up at the AFC West at a team like the Chargers or somebody else, and you're saying, "Man, this thing is not in the bag anymore." You go to 4-1, you feel really good about your chances. And again, a win is a win is a win. And somehow the Chiefs got another one tonight. You really, you just have to be happy that they were able to pull it off. However, they were able to do it.
The Chiefs were 3-4 last year and ended up winning. Was it 8 in a row, 9 in a row, something like that? They played great down the stretch, but I wouldn't recommend that. That was a turnovers fueled slump for the Chiefs in the first 2 months of last season, and that has not been the case today. No turnovers in this game by. Am I right? Yeah, by either team. So, Herbie, so a couple of are suggesting, a couple of in the audience suggesting Willie Gay comes back next year. Or next week. That's not the case, right? He's still out for Buffalo.
Correct. He's not eligible to return until after the Buffalo game. So
49ers will be his first game back.
Correct.
Okay. And, we usually start with this, Herbie, but give us, Jesse gave us some little bit of a rundown of who was available. What did Andy Reid say about the injuries after the game?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of big ones here. Tershawn Wharton, their backup defensive lineman, who's a mainstay in that defensive line rotation. He suffered an ACL injury, so he in all likelihood will be out for the year. Without him, because the Chiefs had to turn to Colin Saunders as well as Malik Herring to get more time in the defensive tackle rotation. And Reid actually complimented Colin Saunders and Herring for their contributions tonight. Brian Cook suffered a concussion. This must have happened in the second half because he was in coverage along with Jalen Watson on that long touchdown pass to Devontae Adams. Rashad Fenton, who didn't have a good game, defensive pass interference, while covering. Devontae Adams suffered, he was battling some cramps. Frank Clark dealing with an illness, and their special team standout cornerback Chris Lamons suffered a hip injury. So they won the game, but my goodness, you got five injuries here. One of them a big one with Wharton.
Yeah, that is a big one. Okay, we'll keep up with the injury reports this week. As you said, they're Buffalo Bills coming to town on Sunday for a 3:25 kickoff on CBS. So Todd asks, when is Butker coming back? I know all of Chiefs fans hope this week. I'm surprised he's been out this long, but there's no real indication, is there?
No, there really isn't. But you know, as Jesse jokingly always says every day at the Chiefs media room, I am on the Harrison Butker beat. I think I've written about 9 stories on Butker now. Hopefully he is back this week. It's a good sign. We did see him in the locker room today. You know, he was out there on the field standing next to special teams coordinator Dave Tobe during the pregame warmups. He wasn't kicking, but he was out there. Look, he suffered his injury in week 1. The Chiefs are not saying it's a high ankle sprain, but you know what? When you're out this long, there's something wrong with your ankle.
Right. Okay, and Chris asks, we'll end it on this one. Can we officially change Mellinger's catchphrase to "the Raiders are going to Raider"? Let me just tell you, Chris, that when on the final play tonight, final play for the Raiders, when Renfro and Adams collided on that 4th and 1, I thought it was a questionable call for a play call. But when they collided, we all kind of looked at each other and said, well, it's the Raiders. At least people who've been watching the Chiefs Raiders for several years. But now that sealed the Chiefs 30-29 victory, makes them 4-1, and they'll face the 4-1 Buffalo Bills here next week. So for Herbie and Jesse, Sam and Vahe, big thanks to our producer Monty Davis, and a huge thanks to all of you all for staying up as late as you did and hanging in there with us. We will talk to you on Thursday for basically our pregame show. Thanks a lot and good night, everybody.